this is the last one we've grabbed from the Solar Cutters Working Together Facebook page, and it's sort of very pertinent with the stuff where Solar Cutters is doing with Clenergy. How important is Australian content and supporting Australian jobs for sundries like battery cabinets to customers? So that's from Bradley Payton, or he's from Power Plus, isn't he? Yeah.
Power Plus.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's sort of a very pertinent question, especially now with where the economy is and the, I guess, more restrictions potentially on importing and stuff like that. Like we've got the Clenergy cutter rail, which is manufactured up in Queensland. It's 100% Australian made, but do we see more and more products, solar components, miscellaneous bill of materials, Boss products come from Australia? Like, what are you guys sort of thinking?
This is a pretty deep question, really.
Well, do you have a personal view as well as put Clenergy to one side, but like, where do you sort of see? You've been in solar for a long time, you can tell. Like,
yeah, look, I think we're going to see a lot. I mean, it's definitely, with everything going on, you know, macroeconomic wise globally with China and the US and, you know, Australia and all those sort of things. I think that we're going to see more of a drive to manufacture locally, for sure. And you know, that's something that we've been striving to do that for a long time. You know, we've been striving to get some local manufacturing in place since we started, really. And now it's finally at a point where it makes sense to get, you know, with the cutter rails and whatnot, and the market's ready for that product.
Because rail coming from overseas is the more and more is getting bound by higher duty taxes and things like that. Yeah, like.
Yeah, that's right. So, you know, there is a, I guess, not officially, but I think the Australian government is trying to set a floor price on the on the price of aluminium extrusions that are coming into the country to help to, you know, continue to stimulate the local manufacturers. So, which is good. You know, at the same time, it's hard to say how things are going to pan out moving forward, you know, and it's a very sensitive topic. But the thing about solar globally is that, you know, we're very tied to China, really, you know. And so this sort of thing that I've been thinking a lot about recently with COVID and everything that's going on with the US and China. How is this going to pan out, and what's it going to mean for the industry moving forward? Have you guys thought about that?
Well, just quickly on Clenergy before we ask sort of Jack, like, is it on the table to having more components manufactured here in Australia? Is that sort of maybe in the long-term plan to, if it's feasible, like obviously to do so?
Yeah, 100%. That's definitely something that we'd want to do. I mean, you know, ideally at the end of the day, it's all about delivering value to the end customer. So, and it is important if delivering value is having local content, then that's the way that we'll be going. In the past, it wasn't. And so, you know, but now, you know, the installers are able to vote with their dollars, and they're voting for locally made products. And that's the way that we want to go down.
And solar is typically usually priced quite low, because we're always, you know, quality operators are always competing against those bill buster Wi-Fi power specials. So you've always got the customer by comparing your far superior quote, you know, with a Wi-Fi powered inverter. I'm just trying to think what sort of difference, say, an Australian made sundry would make to the bottom line. You know, let's take that into account, how much it's going to increase the price by, and how it's conveyed to the customer as well. Obviously, customers usually go on panels and inverter, which is what I see on Solar QA. It's mostly the modules themselves and the inverter, and maybe the smart meter. All the sundry / miscellaneous hardware, including the racking, is rarely cited or rarely brought up in a quote comparison. But obviously I fully support Australian manufacturing as well. But I just have a feeling that right now, a lot of those installers would sort of struggle if there was a significant increase on that price in terms of the wholesale price, because they're still getting beaten, you know, on quotes already, which are, you know, far less. But obviously, price is obviously still a huge factor as well. Because the post here was specifically talking about sundries. So the example here was the battery cabinet, which I fully endorse Australian-made products. Because you can use the other side of it where you look at the mill inverter, which is Australian-made inverter, and I've only heard great things about it. It's obviously more expensive than other things out there, but I'm seeing it's getting a lot of good traction. A lot of people are buying into it because it's very hard to compare to it because it's really there's nothing else sort of quite like it in terms of its origin. So I'm a big fan of it, and hopefully we get to see more of them into the market.
Yeah, so as long as the economics make sense, which sort of both guys are saying, I think there's still ultimately people would want to support an Australian product if they could. I think, from what I gather.
And obviously, there's customers that want to buy quality, and they prefer to spend more on quality. And if that comes with an Australian-made component, then that's great. That's great for us. It's great for the customer. But you're always going to have those customers who just want the cheapest possible thing on their roof, and they just don't care where it's come from.
Yeah,
and the reality is that's a lot of the time who we're competing with. So,
but they're the guys that aren't solar cutters and aren't considered a cutter spec installs.
But we are seeing a good push for that now, especially on the racking side, where you're seeing more and more Australian-made racking.
Yeah.
But this is just my opinion and just my 2 cents. When we were doing Sunlock at Energy Matters exclusively, and that was 100% Australian designed and manufactured, it really made no difference to the customer, like the origin of that product, simply because it wasn't a major component in the purchase, i.e. compared to the inverter or the panels. That's just my feedback and my opinion. But I think customers are becoming more cluey now, especially with the current COVID climate. I think we're moving in a better direction, especially with the racking.
I think as long as we're the main thing. I mean, what does it mean to be made closer to your home? Is the question you need to ask yourself.
Well, I think it's local support of it is the key, the biggest.
Well, this is the thing, right? It's not only. I mean, local support is great, and it's one thing, but I think as long as if we do get to a point where there's a lot more local manufacturing in Australia, and I'm not talking about solar specifically, any industry in general, what I'd like to see is that money goes towards innovation, because we need to grow as a country, right? And we've got an opportunity to do so. So the main thing I think is, as long as that money is being used to update the machinery and increase automation and get us into a position where we can actually, it makes sense whether there's a dumping duty or not to manufacture locally. That's the ideal world situation. We get that you get to have your cake and eat it too in those situations, and that's the main thing that I want to see moving forward. And whatever money gets invested ultimately by the consumer, by voting with their dollars to purchase an Australian-made product moving forward, let's make sure that money is well spent in the companies that it's going towards locally, that they're going to be continuing to innovate and to grow the country in general, because that's what we need to do moving forward.
And then you'll be at the cutting edge of technology.
Yeah.
And obviously the highest quality component is obviously the most important. So I 100% agree with you. Just as long as that's 100% conveyed to the end user when they're going through their purchase cycle, then I think it's great. But at the moment, they're just not really seeing it, because the post is specifically talking about like sundries, like battery cabinets, and what that means to the installer. Just at the moment, it's just the customer's just not. It's not quite seeing it, I don't think, because it's not a major component.
You're exactly right. Like, the installer probably is wanting or preferring the locally made product, but at the end of the day, is the framing component, for example, is several $100s compared to the inverters, and the panels are several $1,000s. So it's, how do you sort of justify that to the customer that this small part of the system is so critical?
I think the sentiment was, I really admire the fact that he did put the poll up. And I think it resonated a lot with people there and sort of made them think about, oh, hey, actually, I wouldn't mind getting that made here. And if I can source it locally, maybe we'll spend the extra and get it. And then maybe they'll change their sales approach. But I think it was a great initiative to put that poll up. And I think we would see more like that. Around different sundries like isolators, and obviously racking as well as a big one, because obviously racking's like the third, panels, inverter, racking, and then the sundries, because racking's arguably the most cheapest, but it's obviously the most critical component because obviously it holds the thing to your structure. I think it was a great post.
No, great. Yeah.
I think like it's just to reiterate that. I think things are changing, Longy. Like I know how you mentioned with Sunlock that it just wasn't an important factor as far as the locally made side of things, I guess 6 or 7 years ago. But I think that is changing. With the word I'm hearing on the ground from some of the major retailers now is that they're actually putting this up as part of their sales pitch, almost as a closing point sometimes, that they can now, introduce some locally made products into the install, and it's helping them to win jobs, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, like it was important to us at the time, and obviously we did use it in our sales pitch, and about 90% of the time it just wasn't really a factor in the end purchase. They were just concerned about the panels and inverters. And then you go, oh, the racking's Australian made, and they'll be like, oh.
Did you do many feedbacks or questionnaires or follow-ups with some of these guys at Energy Matters about their decision-making process to understand like what the sentiments you were saying there? Like, did you guys do that research?
No.
But you probably, I agree with you.
But I think, I just think it was, at the time, 6-7 years ago, it just wasn't, the more prevalent product to be talking about its country of origin. Whereas now in the current climate, especially elevated by COVID, you have an inverter manufacturer, Mill, that is Australian made. And a lot of operators are selling it on the fact that it is Australian designed and manufactured, and the fact that it is a higher quality unit. And a lot of operators are selling it on that, for like a premium, and they're getting good results and the product does perform.
And especially in certain regions all over Australia, like specific markets where it's more critical than others. Like people who would 100% want as much Australian made product as they can, as opposed to others. But like regional areas, for example, I think would be more inclined, generally speaking, to support Australian products as much as they could.
Yeah.
That's where the local innovation comes in, because, they obviously care about Australia as a market, whereas a lot of other manufacturers, it's hard to, you've got a much larger market globally, and you've got to assign the amount of resources you have towards the, unfortunately or fortunately, the places where the majority of revenue is coming through. So it's harder to have an ear on the ground in all places all at once. I think that's one of the things that really helped us being born here, was that we never lost that in the end. And just listen, like that's where innovation comes from, right? I mean, it's listening to the guys closest to your location and designing products specifically for Australia, which is a different market to many others.
And that's why you with the cutter rails, for example, like you ask the solar social media and all the solar cutters for feedback. Do you want a longer length? Do you want what type of length rail do you need? Do you want an Australian product? Blah blah blah. And here we are in September, and the cutter rails flying out the door, so to speak. And I think there's nearly within some channels, there's more people buying the Australian made product than the traditional product. So you ask the market, you got the information, and you produce something. And that's like, obviously, like we're very close with Clenergy as a company, but like it's admired, and it'd be great if obviously more companies sort of did that, got that research to create better products for us as an industry.
Yeah, spent more time listening, less time talking, I suppose, is the main thing. That's all. It's not rocket science, you just listen to what the people want, and then you design around it, and you prioritize based on like what we're doing recently with the change of product development. We're moving to an agile framework, and then you get on with business. Like I think many manufacturers in many industries could learn from that. You know,
Exactly.
And the way you're able to quickly extract valuable information and feedback off the Facebook platform, specifically the Solar Cutters Working Together page, I thought was quite beneficial for you guys as well.
100%. It's been like, I liken it to, you know, in the old days, once again, talking locally here, you'd go out into the streets and go to the marketplace and hear what the word is on the ground and talk to the different vendors and get feedback from the guys on the ground. That's really what this is. It's a communal space where you can, there's nothing else like it as far as from our perspective. The amount of information we get from the Soul Cutters Working Together Facebook page and the amount of feedback, it's phenomenal. And the cool thing about it is the more you engage, the more people engage back. So, you know, it's
that information sharing and that willingness to learn and to educate and provide the feedback. Facebook wasn't as prevalent, obviously 5, 6, 7 years ago, but I don't think the people were necessarily as willing to sort of share information, especially with competitors and other people within their industry. And now we're getting that, and solar on social media is a great platform.
Yeah, there's quite a synergy about it, especially on that Solar Cutters Working Together page, where a lot of those members would arguably be competitors, or they would be, you know, someone in Sydney, someone in Perth, don't even know each other, but they're sharing information and they're collaborating, which is great, but that's been happening for a few years now on that platform. But what we're seeing now is there's more of a surge in like-minded manufacturers and suppliers who want to get involved in the platform and actually help, the boots on the ground and extract the feedback and information in a way that's beneficial to both parties. And that's sort of what Clenergy is doing is now, but we are seeing a few others starting to do it as well. And obviously me and Costa are quite picky about manufacturers. Obviously they got to, be all about quality in their community and not all about...
Send us gift packs and stuff.
Yeah, the gift packs are great.
Solar swag, yeah.
But no, we don't let everyone in. No, but it has come a long way. And I think that's the beauty of it, where, there's a lot of great ideas and they get bounced around. And most people understand, the rules, how it all works. And we do have a solid admin. But just the way that manufacturers sort of like Clenergy are engaging on that forum is quite powerful as well. Even if it's negative, it's still quite constructive. I think that sort of resonated well with Clenergy. I was part of that sprint, and a lot of that feedback came through rapidly off that Facebook forum, where sort of 5-7 years ago you'd have to wait months, sometimes years, to get some sort of feedback back on a product.
Totally. Yeah. How cool is it you can make a poll? I mean, that alone is so valuable. Seriously.
And I like how you can just have randoms just add stupid crap onto the poll just to sort of ruin the whole thing. Yeah, it's great.
I mean, I honestly, I just want milk that tastes like real milk. That's the main thing.